Hi all, this video is going to be about the ultra-low emission zone and the low emission zone overviews as proposed by the TFL website. It's going to go over the proposals, discounts and exemptions, who's affected, and the actual questionnaire itself. I think everybody should go fill out the questionnaire that works in London, travels into London, commutes around London, or lives in one of the inner city areas. It affects a lot of people, and I think most people don't realise how much it's going to affect them in terms of business or getting around. And if they're affected, I'll put the links in for the website, which lets you know if your vehicle's affected. There's going to be quite a lot of people affected that probably have just ignored this. Okay, I'm just going to jump onto the TFL's webpage regarding the consultation. The first thing it talks about is background. Air pollution is one of the biggest challenges facing London, affecting health of all Londoners. It contributes to thousands of early deaths each year and impacts our health over the course of our lives, leading to a decreased lung function in our children and greater risk of dementia and stroke as we get older. Soon after his election, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, called for new proposals to urgently help tackle London's lethal health pollution. The Mayor has already introduced the T-Charge in central London, put forward the start date of the Ultra-Low Emission Zone for central London to 8th April 2019, and announced a series of measures to clean up London's bus fleet. We are now consulting on detailed proposals for 2 further initiatives to improve London's air. These involve tightening the standards of the existing London-wide low emission zone from 2020, which affects heavy vehicles, buses, coaches and HGVs and other heavy specialist vehicles. Expanding the ultra-light emission zones for light vehicles, cars, vans and motorcycles from central London to inner London up to, but not including the North Circular roads in 2021. So that's all vehicles in the area are subject to emission standards. So this is the interesting bit. It's not just the congestion charge area or the original T-zones area. It's expandment up to, but not including, the A406 or North Circular, South Circulars. It then goes on to just say why improve it. It has a little map of what bits are affected and where we are and the limits. Currently, around 50% of nitrous oxide emissions in Greater London are from road transport, with diesel vehicles the largest contributor to road transport emissions. The graph below shows the sources of nitrous oxide in Greater London in 2013. Okay, looking at the graph, if we just take it from the left-hand side, 51% of this actual nitrous oxide pollution is coming from road transport, 7% from industry, 3% from domestic and commercial and other fuels, 7% from commercial gases, 12% from domestic gas, 7% from NRMM, 1% from other, 3% from rail, 1% from river, and 8% from aviation. If you break down on that 51% of road transport, there's another graph on the right hand side if we just go over to that. 13% is from vans and minibuses, 20% is from TFL buses, 6% from coaches, 15% from rigid HGVs, 5% from Arctic HGVs, less than 1% from motorcycles, 4% from taxis, 12% from petrol cars, and 24% from diesel cars. So looking at that, the biggest is diesel cars, the second being TFL buses, if anything, and the next biggest is rigid HGVs. In terms of diesel cars, I'm not sure if you're old enough to remember, a while back there was a scrappage scheme done in the UK, and that was to get people off petrol cars, saying they were more polluting. Diesel cars were more fuel efficient, and there was less harm to the environment. So a lot of people traded in the cars and got diesel cars at that point. Now, a couple of years down the line, it looks like all those people that bought those cars are now getting penalised again to get rid of those cars, and basically have to either go to petrol or have to go to electric. Again, a couple of years down the line, who's to say electric cars aren't going to be in the same levy as this. To make a lithium battery or make any kind of batteries, I'm sure takes a lot of resources and pollution. I don't think it's as economic as everybody says it is, in terms of just because there's no pollution coming out the back of it doesn't mean to create that product hasn't used a lot of resources in the first place. I reckon in a couple of years' time that will probably be in the same sort of situation, unless there's sort of more people on public transport or trams or so on. They're going to say, again, if you've ever used public transport in the mornings in rush hour, you'll know how bad it can be and how many delays there are, cancellations, and you don't even get your money back half the time. For example, my local station, before, if you were delayed by 30 minutes on a journey or so on, you could claim back your money. Now, instead of getting that money back, what they're doing is keeping you outside the stations, saying it's to traffic calming measure to keep people off the platform from overcrowding. There's not even anyone on the platform, so it's just to get other people from other platforms onto the trains, delaying your journey, but it means you can't claim back your money because you physically haven't gone through the barriers in order to be delayed. So it's all a give and take, I think, but there are some things I think TFL are starting to take liberties with in terms of how they get these figures and how they're justifying it. Our proposals. London currently operates a London-wide low emission zone, which affects heavy vehicles. Currently, the low emission zone requires all heavy vehicles to meet Euro 4 particulate matter standard or pay a daily charge of £200, and all vans and minibuses to meet a Euro 3 particulate matter standard or pay a daily charge of £100. The Mayor has now confirmed the introduction of an ultra-low emission zone in central London from 8th April 2019. The ultra-low emission zone will apply 24 hours a day, every day of the year. All vehicles that do not meet the emission standards will be liable to pay a daily charge to drive within the zone. The ultra-low emission zone will replace the current T-charge. The proposals we are now consulting on are introducing tougher emission standards for the low emission zone from 2020 so that they affect heavy vehicles London-wide. Expanding the ultra-low emission zone from central London up to, but not including, the north and south circulars in 2021 for light vehicles, excluding taxis, so that all vehicles in this inner city area are subject to emission standards. Euro standards explained. Broadly speaking, vehicles that meet the required emission standards are those registered after the following dates. The below graph just explains what they are in terms of motorcycles, cars, vans, HGVs, buses. Proposals to introduce tougher emission standards for heavy vehicles in low emission zone in 2020. We are proposing to introduce a London-wide Euro 6 standard for heavy vehicles, lorries, coaches, buses and other heavy specialist vehicles from 26 October 2020. This will be introduced through a change in emission standards for the existing London-wide low emission zone. Currently, the low emission zone requires all heavy vehicles to meet a Euro 4 particle matter standard or pay a daily charge of £200. We are proposing that all heavy vehicles driving in the London-wide low emission zone will need to meet a Euro 6 standard for nitrous oxides and a particle matter or pay an extra daily charge of £100. Vehicles that do not meet the Euro 4 particle matter standard will now need to pay a total of £300 daily charge. So the existing cars that are already, vehicles are paying £200 are now going to be paying £300, so £100 up. From 26 October 2020, there will be no additional emissions charge for heavy vehicles to drive in the ultra-low emission zone area. Well, that's because you've already charged them up previously, so there wouldn't be any need for it, would there? The current low emission zone requires vans, minibuses and similar vehicles to meet a Euro 3 particle matter standard or pay a daily charge of £100. These vehicles would need to meet a ultra-low emission zone Euro 6 standard or pay additional emission charge of £12.50 when driving in the low emission zone. The information above relates to the following questions within the consultation questionnaire. Question 1. Do you support tougher vehicle emission standards in the London-wide low emission zone so that heavy vehicles must meet Euro 6 London-wide? Question 2. Do you support the proposed implementation date of the 26th of October 2020 for the introduction of tougher Euro 6 standards for heavy vehicles driving in the London-wide low emission zone? Question 3. Do you support the proposed daily changes to be paid by owners of heavy vehicles that do not meet the required emissions standards at? Proposal to expand the ultra-low emission zone up to the North Circular and South Circulars in 2021. The Central London Low Emission Zone scheme will come into operation in April 2019, and we are proposing that from 25th October 2021 this will cover an extended area, roughly up to but not including the North and South Circular roads as indicated in the map below. The emission standards for light vehicles will be diesel cars, vans, minibuses and similar vehicles Euro 6 nitrous oxide and particulate matter, petrol cars, vans and similar vehicles Euro 4 nitrous oxide, motorcycles, scooters, mopeds and similar vehicles Euro 3 nitrous oxide. Light vehicles which do not meet these standards would need to pay a daily charge of £12.50 in order to drive in the ultra-low emission standards. This will be in addition to any applicable daily congestion charge in central London. Okay, so you are paying more, but this isn't just because congestion charge in central London now, it's gone up to the North Circular. We want your view on whether to support expanding the area where ultra-low emission zone and emission standards apply to light vehicles, cars, vans, minibuses and motorcycles. Because of the proposed changes to the low emission zones, this will mean that all vehicles are subject to emission standards in the inner city London area. We also want your view on whether 25th of October 2021 is the correct date to implement the proposal. Okay, if you look at the original map, the original zones were in the city. It's a business area mostly. There are some people living in there, but they're generally more well off than surrounding areas. People travelling there could afford to pay a charge for the one-off times they do drive around the areas. However, if you look at the surrounding areas, Tower Hamlets, Southwark, Lambeth, Lewisham, Newham, Waltham Forest, Hackney, Camden, Haringey, they're not so well off. So people living on there are probably on average wages, or there could be some people on there on minimum wage and so on as well. In terms of paying £12.50 a day just to drive your car into work or around work, because this isn't only including the city, it doesn't mean they're going to the city. They could be going out of the city, but they'll get covered in that area. So if they're going to the A406 or to the South Circular, they would still have to drive through that area. They will still be affected if they've got businesses in that area and people want to shop in there, like bring a car or ride a bike to there to pick something up. That business will probably go down if people can't afford to bring their cars in. Not everybody travels by taxi. Not everybody wants to take a bus to pick up their shopping and so on. I don't see how that would benefit anybody else around it. In terms of air pollution, yes, maybe do it in the central city area, which is where most people will travel around. Generally, if you live in those outer city areas, you are going by public transport anyway into central London, into workplaces. It's people going out of the areas that have to travel by roads that are going to be affected more than anything else, I would say. The information above relates to the following questions within the consultation questionnaire. Do you support the principle expanding the area where ultra-low emission zone standards apply to light vehicles beyond central London? We are proposing that the ultra-low emission zone standards would apply to inner city London area below, roughly but not up to including North Circular roads. Do you support the proposed boundary? Do you support the proposed implementation date of the 25th of October 2021 for the expansion of the ultra-low emission zone including light vehicles in inner London? Do you support the proposed ultra-low emission zone daily charge to be paid by non-compliant owners of light vehicles of £12.50? So this is where it comes down to people not paying attention or not caring. This is going to affect a lot of people, residents living in not well-off parts of London. it's a inner city. It's north, east, south, wherever you are. It's anything within the south and north circular. If you live within those areas and you have a car, go onto the website, check that your car isn't affected. If it is, it will mean selling your car probably at a reduced rate for what it's worth, because nobody in those areas are going to be buying it. Generally what happens is things like this happen in central London, and then they expand to other major cities, Birmingham, the Midlands, up north. Okay, if you just look at the 2017 map, it's covering a small area, central London, the city basically. There's a £10 congestion charge daily rate, and there's certain vehicles that have to meet the lower emission zones, which is fine. It's central London, and vehicles don't need to go through central London in order to get to places. They can go around the surrounding areas. In 2019, it's confirmed these changes are going to happen in the low emission zones in terms of vehicles. So if you look at the two up there, there are some tighter regulations on what's allowed in, but the addition of the motorbikes, that's less than 1% of traffic going into central London or causing the pollution in the first place. That less than 1% is paying exactly the same amount as a car would to be in there. If you're driving into central London on a daily basis, and you can afford the parking, fair enough, you're paying your money, you're doing it. On a motorbike, the reasons you'll probably be doing it is to get into work and not have to go on public transport, or to save some time. In terms of paying £12.50 a day to travel into work, that's not including parking. So I can see free parking going for motorbikes as well, and they'll start charging for that. You will end up paying exactly the same amount as going by a train or something else. They're basically cutting out these people from getting into work. If you're on a low paid job and it's costing you more to get into work than it is that you're earning in your whole working day, you're not going to be travelling in. So there's going to end up being more people on the dole not working, or there's going to be jobs that aren't going to be filled because people can't get into work, or it's not worth them going into work for the amount of money they're going to earn for how much it's costing. So if you look at the 2020 proposal, what's changed on here? The Euro 6 standard applies to London-wide for heavy vehicles. That's what they want. Now the 2021 proposal, that's probably where it's going to affect the most amount of people. It's people living around the area. It expands to inner London. That's the one people should be paying most attention to, and actually caring about if you live within that area or travel within that area on a daily basis. It doesn't mean central London, it means anything inside of the north and south circular. You're going to be paying £12.50 if you're on a bike to get into that area, regardless of if you're going into central London or not. This could just be you driving down, riding around to meet friends, family, to the shops, so on. In terms of cars and stuff, your car's parked on your driveway, you might be okay. Cars parked out on the road or going down the road somewhere, you're going to be paying £12.50 if it gets captured by one of the cameras. So if your route involves you going down one of these roads, regardless of whether you're going into the zone or out of the zone, you are going to be paying £12.50 a day to drive one of those cars. So you're going to either have to get rid of them, pay £3,000 to get a kit fitted to your car and have it checked yearly so it meets the minimum requirements, or sell your car and get another car. Not everybody can afford to buy a brand new car. You should be checking on the website. I'll put the link in the bottom of if your car's affected. It's not just something that you can ignore. Changes to Central London Low Emission Zone sunset period for residents. We are proposing to make a change to the sunset period or grace period for congestion charge zone residents, vehicles that do not meet the Ultra-Low Emission Zone emission standards for Central London. During this sunset period, residents who register are entitled to a 100% discount on the Ultra-Low Emission Zone daily charge, but would continue to pay a daily congestion charge or T charge. At the end of this period, residents will be liable for the full daily charge if they use vehicles that do not meet the Ultra-Low Emission Zone standards. In order to ensure all residents living in the Ultra-Low Emission Zone area are treated the same way, we propose the sunset period ends 25th October 2021 instead of April 2022. The end of the sunset period for residents in the Central London Low Emission Zone would be the same as the start date for the expansion of the ultra-low emission zone up to North Circular, South Circular roads. This means all residents within the expanded ultra-low emission zone will need to meet the ultra-low emission zone standards or pay the daily charge at the same time. We are not proposing any sunset period for residents living in the expanded ultra-low emission zone area. All residents living in the ultra-low emission zone up to the North Circular and South Circular roads, including Central London, will need to comply with emissions standards or pay a daily charge from 25th October 2021. So anyone in this new expanded side would have to pay from day dot. It's not even a grace period or anything coming in. They just want to lower it from the central ones to make it seem like it's more fair. It's an expansion regardless. It doesn't make any difference if it's going. They're not the people that were previously exempt are now no longer exempt. It's still an expansion, and these people will still have to pay for something they didn't previously have to pay for. The information above relates to the following question within the consultation questionnaire. Do you support bringing forward the end of the sunset period for residents in the Central London Congestion Zone from April 7th, 2020 to 24th October 2021, so that all residents of the inner zone London, including the congestion charge zones, pay a daily charge for non-compliant vehicles from 25th October 2021? So this question is basically asking, do you think the people that are now exempt from all the charges should be paying regardless of if this expansion happens or not, by the sounds of it? So if you say they should be exempt, then they'll just take it away later on down the line. If you say no, they shouldn't be exempt, they'll just cut the charge off straight away on the earlier date, regardless of whether it's getting expanded or not. So there isn't any sort of any leeway, I say, there. Penalty charges for non-payment of low emission zone and ultra-low emission zone charges. We recently consulted on raising the penalty charge notice from £130 to £160 for non-payment of the congestion charge and moving traffic violations on the Transport for London road network. We are now consulting on a similar increase to the penalty charge notice level for non-payment of the ultra-low emission zone charge for non-compliant cars, vans and motorcycles from £130 to £160. From October 2020, the penalty charge notice for non-payment of the low emission zone charge for Euro 4 and 5 heavy vehicles will be £1,000. The penalty charge notice for non-payment of the low emission zone charge for heavy vehicles that do not meet the Euro 4 particle matter standard and therefore do not meet the Euro 6 either will be £2,000. The information above relates to the question within the questionnaire. Question number 9. Do you support increasing the penalty charge notice level for non-payment of the ultra-low emission zone daily charge by owners of non-compliant light vehicles from £130 to £160? Discounts and exemptions. The following discounts and exemptions will apply to ultra-low emission zone and the low emission zone. Taxis. London licensed taxis are exempt from ultra-low emission zone. Every licensed taxi is fully accessible for wheelchair users, so offer a vital transport option for passengers with accessibility needs or heavy luggage, or when public transport is not suitable. They are also designed specifically for London streets. As they are specialist vehicles, drivers have limited choice of models. However, they have a 15-year age limit, and we are introducing a new licensing requirement from 2018 that all newly licensed vehicles are zero emissions capable. Vehicles for disabled people. Vehicles that have a disabled or disabled passenger vehicles tax class and are exempt from vehicle tax, except those operated by or on behalf of Transport for London, will be granted a disabled vehicle sunset period and will be exempt from the ultra-low emission zones until 10th September 2023. Blue badge holders will be required to meet the new ultra-low emission zone emission standards or pay an ultra-low emission zone charge unless their vehicles has a disabled or disabled passenger vehicle tax class. Historic vehicles and vehicles registered prior to 1973. All vehicles that have a historic vehicle tax class or are registered prior to 1st January 1973 will be exempt from the ultra-low emission zone. These vehicles were built before emission standards came into force and are exempt because they're unsuitable for engine conversion or replacement. Specialist vehicles. A small number of vehicle types which are currently exempt from the low emission zones would be exempt from the ultra low emission zone charges, including agricultural vehicles, military vehicles, non-road going vehicles which are allowed to drive on the highway, for example excavators, certain types of mobile cranes. These are not anything that you would see on the road, so I don't even see what the point of even having them there is as an exception, because they're not road vehicles. These vehicles typically use engines certified to a different standard than road-going engines and are exempt due to their unsuitability for conversion to an alternative fuel or engine replacement. The non-road mobile machinery lower emission zone seeks to tackle emissions from these sources. Discount to showman's vehicles. Some showman's vehicles which have been custom built and are permanently fitted with a rigid body forming part of the equipment for the show are eligible for 100% discount from the low emission zone's daily charge if they are registered to a person following the business of travel showman and have been modified or specifically constructed. Trailers and semi-trailers which have been modified and specifically constructed are not eligible for the 100% discount. So what's the takeaway of this video? Well, first things first, click on the link in the description and check if your vehicle's affected by the changes that are being proposed. Chances are if you bought a car in the last 6 years, you probably will be. Secondly, click on the consultation link. Regardless of whether you come into London often or not, the changes happening now within London are probably going to be affecting the rest of the UK. So if you live in the UK, you do want to be having your voice heard. Regardless of if anybody does actually listen to it in the end. I know, just filling out a questionnaire, it doesn't seem like much, but at least if your voice is heard even slightly, it's still better off than just staying quiet and letting things happen without your consent. This is regardless of whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing. That's up to you. The links for the documents and so on, pages are in the description. You can make up your own mind. I've just quickly read over the page. Share the links, basically. If you know other people who might be affected, share it with those people and tell them to watch the video, go onto the pages, read it, read the information available, as much information you can. It's going to affect people's lives, regardless of if it's just getting passed over as a gimmick or a face-saving exercise.